The war on kids and the normalization of madness continues on the daily. Gender clinics in Carolina are now seeing children as young as 2 years old for gender dysphoria. Now, they're not driving themselves there, and I can't see them hopping on the bus. So this insanity comes from the parents, and that for me just adds yet more horror into the equation. The people that brought the child into the world, the people that are meant to love and care for that child above all others on the planet, are pushing their child towards a life of misery, confusion, and ultimately regret. And for what? Because they believe they're doing the right thing by them? Doubtful, but for a few cases. Because they themselves are miserable and confused? Yes, in many cases, but extreme gender ideology and those that ally themselves with it and even promote it globally are doing the absolute worst by our youth. They're taking the purest of our species and turning them into nothing more than trans handbags, the accessory that every good Joe Biden supporting fake liberal parent needs in their wardrobe. Now, to hell with what it means for the handbag when the fashion changes, of course. Last week, Colorado House Democrats voted against making indecent exposure to children a felony. Democrats argued that the bill targets drag shows and the trans community. Okay, so now we're putting the feelings of a handful of red flags that like dressing up in women's clothes in front of kids before the actual safety of children. When can we expect a drag queen story hour to hit our local, old people's homes or our local social clubs, by the way? Because if it's not about targeting the kids, I imagine, we can expect that any time now. Now check this out for a headline, and by the way, it's not April the 1st. Trans woman is cleared of flashing her penis at 3 women using Ohio YMCA after judge ruled she's too fat for her genitals to be visible. Now, why is it the media fact checkers are always having a coffee break whenever a journalist, uses the term her penis? Now, to make things worse, this person's got form too, with a history of complaints, including one of sexual assault against a woman, obviously. The normalization of insanity and the erosion of all protections against women and children is being done by design. 20% of children and young people aged between 3 and 17 in the United States have a mental, emotional, or behavioral disorder. And this trend isn't just within the USA, it's everywhere. And are you surprised? What they consume through their diet, through their education, through their TV is exactly the same thing. It's fear-based processed crap, and it has no nutrients, nothing of value. It's poisonous to humans. They're locked away in sterilized 2-meter rule segregated classrooms, far removed from nature, and told that the natural world that they're yet to even begin to experience is going to end any minute now. In the words of Jamie Mitchell of Gays Against Groomers, parents are offering their children up at the altar of woke. And the more they try and silence us, label us far-right, bigots, or conspiracy theories for pointing this out, the louder the pointing out must become. The madness must be called out for being madness, no matter what delusions get taken down in the process. The war on kids is the Achilles heel in the entire chess game because it's the one lighthouse that stands firm in a sea of organized division. Now, you can make people fight each other, see each other as enemies over 1,000,001 meaningless differences, but if a man has kids, it matters not what color he is or what his monthly salary amounts to. It only matters that he's got kids and he's sworn to protect them. And so the message is a united one. Leave the kids the fuck alone.
Well, I would say originally I couldn't even come to terms with what the purpose of the technology was, because when I first went through the patents, it was clear that they were not biologics, they were technologies. They were advanced electromagnetic technologies, and that's even articulated in the laws and some of the vernacular that's used in Pfizer's DoD contract, the Department of Defense. So at first, I really couldn't even come to terms with what the purposes were, because it was clear that these targeted not just the respiratory, cardiovascular, and vasculature systems, but also the reproductive organs. And there was too much information dedicated to the electromagnetic devices crossing the blood-brain barrier, and being able to essentially hijack the central nervous system within 30 minutes or less. So there was just too much information around that. So at first, I just saw this as an obedience platform, that you would have to get injected, and it was going to cause disease, disabilities, and death. Being in the industry now for over 25 years, the industry was pretty much dead on arrival in 2008, 2009, where they were on their last breaths. In 2016, they were DOA. So this made multiple multi-billion-dollar markets, new diseases for the pharmaceutical industry to treat. So that's one of the reasons. It's just pure greed. Pfizer has a product called Vyndaqel. It's literally Vyndaqel. Now when I say it out loud. Yeah, I know, sorry. And I don't mean to chuckle. It's $225,000 a treatment. And it treats myocarditis or cardiomyopathy caused by wild-type amyloid spike protein. Well, guess what contains wild-type amyloid spike protein? Pfizer's mRNA technology injections.
You just create the problem to then offer a solution to make billions.
Yeah, but through knowledge, wisdom, and prayer, this seems to be an extinction platform. Because it's going to cause disease, disabilities, and death. And then also the gene editing technology. The purposes are to integrate non-human DNA, non-human biological DNA, and mechanical technologies with the human genome. So by directing the evolution of humans, it's forcing our extinction.
I mean, let's face it, even with the simplest of decisions, if we were forced to live for the rest of our lives with decisions that we made when we were 13, 14, 15, 16, then, all of us would have big regrets. But luckily, the majority of us are making decisions that don't have lifelong implications. When it comes to the transgender issue, they are lifelong implications, even when it comes to, the puberty blockers, which everyone says are reversible. Actually, if you look at the statistics and the, repercussions and the side effects down the line, then, we're taking something that could be as simply as kind as letting children go through phases. Let them experiment with their own identities, cut their hair, shave their heads, wear a dress, call themselves whatever they want to call themselves, and try and figure out their own little path in life in the innocent way that it is. Then when they're an adult, that's a whole different ballgame. But as children, we as adults are there to protect them and to look after them and to make sure that if they can't get a tattoo or drink alcohol or buy a bloody lottery ticket, that they're not making decisions that have lifelong implications that they may turn out to regret, or even if they don't turn out to regret them, they will have lost out on so many things. You are literally making people infertile. You're taking away sexual function. You're taking away ability to orgasm from someone who doesn't even know what that is, and nor should they. And you're making those decisions on somebody else's behalf. And that, to me, is lunacy. It's madness. If we can't castrate rapists, why the hell can we castrate children?
Linking back to the coronation and King Charles III being coronated on Saturday, the 6th of May, which was the anniversary of Florence's calling from God, there was a time where, behind the scenes, he was in a white robe and he was embalmed with all of these various herbs and, frankincense. And he had a very like a druid type, pharaohic type ceremony behind the scenes. And you talk about the gold casket. Well, that was represented. It was represented in the parade, and many NHS staff were invited
I saw that,
to watch the parade of Queen Camilla and King Charles going from Westminster Abbey through and past a whole stadium of NHS staff watching. And in the Westminster Abbey, a couple of special guests were there, and there was the first male nurse that attended to the first COVID patient at the time. So they got prime view in Westminster Abbey. I found that quite interesting symbolism, considering what we know now about the COVID pandemic and the vaccinations after that. And also the fact that the nurse was carrying the orb, which is a very symbolic orb. And she was the first nurse since Florence Nightingale to be awarded the Order of Merit. So you can see that within that procession, they're taking great care to make sure that the numbers, the dates, the symbology all line up to make sure that the power of billions of people watching that event on the 6th of May was a very, very spiritual moment for everybody, worshipping our King and Queen as they are pledging their allegiance to be in service, which is what Florence Nightingale said, that we all should be in service to each other.
That's all for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Last week, the World Health Organization decided COVID was over. Just gone. Just disappeared like the Pentagon's 2.3 trillion. The biggest trick, sleight of hand, optical illusion, and how to lie with statistics since 9/11 has finally been laid to rest. It's been laid to rest in a mass grave of sudden deaths, suicides, and deceased livelihoods. It seems that their attempt to get the Arcturus variant off the ground, it failed, so they've drawn a line under this one. But there will be more in the pipeline, because when they tell you their plans, you should believe them. Bill Gates, the next one, will get attention. Smirk shouldn't be ignored. The man is a ghoul, but he's an organised one. Make no mistake, the Rona was meant to do a lot more damage than it did, and it would have had a strong minority not stood up and said enough. So let's raise a glass to the end of the Rona, safe in the knowledge that while they will circle back round, the public have seen them off, at least for a while. Good night.